I went to the second last Smashing Pumpkins show ever at the United Center in Chicago. That's when I came up with the idea.
Stephen Pukin's idea for a Smashing Pumpkins tribute charity benefit concert had more to do with bringing the fans together than bringing the band back together.
Everyone really basically knew that the Pumpkins were over at that point, and people were talking about this is the end. We didn't know exactly what was going to come from Billy next. Someone had remarked the week of the final shows that there'd be no reason for Pumpkins fans to get back together again. Act 4 started out as a pipe dream. The idea was to continue the charity work that the Smashing Pumpkins had done back in 1998 and to bring fans back together.
Act 4, a tribute to the Smashing Pumpkins.
A lot of it goes back to what Mayor Daley first called Smashing Pumpkins Day, July 7th, 1998.
Pumpkins Uber fan and Metro intern Haima explains the connection between the Smashing Pumpkins and charity.
They played a show on the Adore Tour, and it was supposed to be a free charity show at Grant Park, but Damaris said no, and it would draw too many people, so they did it at Tinley at the New World Music Theater, now Tweeter Center. Since they couldn't do a free show, they thought they'd put the money to good use. Proceeds went to charity. That's where this idea to have it on the 7th came from, and then that's why we donated the money to charity, totally in the spirit of the Pumpkins.
I first found out about Act 4 just a few weeks after the Smashing Pumpkins broke up.
Aspiring rock star Lindsay Cooper was one of dozens of artists who sent in a demo tape for Act 4 2001.
I was on a mailing list for people who were going to this party after the second to last Pumpkins show. And I saw a post from Stephen Pukin, who I didn't know at the time. And he said, "We're trying to put together this tribute concert." And I thought to myself, this is a ridiculous and far-fetched idea. But on the off chance that we're possibly able to make this happen, I am going to be involved.
21-year-old Stephen is the organizer of Act 4, the Smashing Pumpkins tribute and charity benefit concert. When he got the idea for the show in fall of 2000, Stephen set his sights on the legendary Chicago music venue where the Pumpkins got their start.
Who would think that we would be able to hold a show at Metro, which for the Pumpkins community is, I guess, a pilgrimage place. Someone had once said, "Oh, sounds like a nice idea, but it'll never happen."
I remember all of us being amazed that it worked out. Not because we doubted Metro, but just because it seemed like such a hey, wouldn't it be cool if they did this thing, and then it happened.
Haima, he was an intern at Metro, and he forwarded the email regarding this prototype long-shot tribute show that was going to be for charity.
Metro owner Joe Shanahan responded enthusiastically to Haima's email.
Joe responded almost immediately saying that this is a great idea, I want to get Billy involved. Billy Corgan, who's a singer of the Smashing Pumpkins and now Swan. Billy was told about it. He thought it was a great idea. He was very flattered.
And Act 4 2001 was off to a running start. With the support of Billy Corgan and Chicago's Metro secured as a venue, the next step was to audition and select the bands and solo artists that would play in the tribute show. Musicians began to send demo tapes, originals and Pumpkins covers, to Stephen and his brother David.
The quality of the first demo I made for Act 4 was absolutely awful. We were in a concert hall, and the recording turned out much too reverby and just a million other little problems like that. But I like to think that when Stephen and David heard my demo, they could tell that I was putting my soul into it and that I was a musician despite the awful quality. And I think that's a huge part of the reason that they ended up choosing me for the show.
Initially, I had chosen the bands by myself, of course with the help of my brother as kind of guidance.
The submission process, there was around 40 to 50 submissions. We weren't really that stringent and just accepted what we got because it's the first show, trying to get as many people to submit as possible.
My original concept for the show was to have as many bands as possible, which was just absolutely ridiculous.
We even had this crazy idea of having, we'll have a 20-group short list and 10 people playing, and then Joe and Virginia were basically like, no, that's not going to happen. You can't have 10 people. Metro would have our heads because it's very hard to deal with 10 bands switching every 15 minutes.
We ended up sticking with the kind of 7-band format, the 3 acoustic, 4 electric.
Even if Joe had allowed 10 bands to go up there, which he didn't, obviously, the show would have suffered.
Of the 40-something demo tapes they received, Stephen and David Pukin were responsible for compiling a short list of 12 bands that would be sent to Joe Shanahan. Of these, Joe would pick the 7 performers that would grace the stage at Metro on July 7th, 2001.
There was a while where we weren't sure Act 4 was going to happen because we were hearing nothing from the club. I'm not even sure if Joe had time to listen to all the demos for like 20 bands, and how is he going to have time to listen to all that?
While they were organizing a show in Chicago, the Pukins were based in Ontario, Canada. Their all-important contact with Metro was through promotions manager Virginia.
Virginia had called us a week or two before they posted the lineup and said, oh, can we just go with what you thought? And so basically Stephen recommended 7 bands, and then they said, okay, we'll go with what you said.
Another one of ours called 10 More Minutes With You.
Act 4 2001 featured 6 up-and-coming artists: Robin Del Rosario, Lindsay Cooper, Christoph the Bald, Lost Logic, Darcy the Band, and Ketamine. Headlining the show were Chicago rock veterans Kill Hannah.
At that point, we hadn't really talked to Joe at all, except through a couple of emails. Virginia was our only link to Metro for the most part.
My name's Virginia Lafort. I do promotions and sponsorship and advertising for Metro and any special events, which Act 4 was one of. Stephen got all of the demos together, then sent them to us, and Joe and the talent buyers listened to them and narrowed it down from there. My job's a lot more about the audience and the people that are fans are at the show.
Promotions for Act 4 centered on the fact that the show was a tribute to a popular rock band.
It's a tribute to Smashing Pumpkins. It's covers, kind of a homage to the band.
We're going to pay tribute to the band while still promoting original music that was inspired by the band. I thought that it'd be regarded as, oh, it's a cover show. It's something more than just cover bands playing for $5 or whatever.
But the audience for the show were Pumpkins fans. Young Pumpkins fans.
Young kids. Probably a lot of kids that didn't get to see the Pumpkins. And I know how many people are under 21 that come in here for those shows, and they're all under 21. And I'm older. I remember when those records came out when I was in college. So it's always interesting to see that audience be so young.
There was this kind of sense that we were actually going to sell out the show like 2 days before, and it didn't look like it just weeks earlier because Kill Hannah were going to be dropping out of the show according to their manager, but Metro was able to convince them to stay on as long as they took them off the advertising for a few weeks so they could promote the show, which was taking place only 2 weeks earlier.
Act 4 2001 sold out the Metro just before the date of the show.
It did a lot better than I thought it was going to do, to be honest with you. It did really well. They were coming off of the end of the band. It was 6 months later. You know, people still weren't ready to let go. Plus, Kill Hannah headlined the show, and they can sell out Metro on their own anyway. They're a huge draw. I think that was part of it. They definitely were the icing on the cake.
While some of those young kids in the audience had never gotten to see the Smashing Pumpkins, some of them had been to the final Pumpkins shows. The name Act 4 had a special meaning for them.
Act 4, to explain the name, it has to do with the final show the Pumpkins ever did, which was 3 acts, separated by these weird clowns holding up Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. So this is like the 4th act that never happened. Was basically a good name because it was vague enough and it kind of fit the idea of this being like a show. We ended up having like a poll to see what to name everyone liked the most, and ended up being Act 4, The Echo Rings Forever On.
The first Act 4 rocked the Metro on July 7th, 2001.
The atmosphere leading up to the show was somewhat hectic. Our biggest thing was trying to get everyone sound checked on time, and I mean, when you have 7 bands, it's kind of hard to sound check and that many people. Pretty much all of the problems were solved in that day.
I think it was pretty exciting for a lot of people who had never gotten to go backstage at a show before, and they got to go backstage and not feel like groupies, but they got to go backstage and feel like they were working something. I remember that first year, there were probably like 80 people working. I think we just kind of gave out working passes to the first 80 people who walked in.
The whole time we were planning Act 4 that first year, we had this joke, what if Billy comes to the show? And never in our wildest dreams did we ever imagine that he actually would be there. I remember I was standing in the VIP section of the Metro after I played my set, hanging out and having a good time and listening to the band Darcy play. And Billy Corgan walked by about 3 feet in front of me. I think that's the only time in my life when my jaw has actually dropped and hung there.
The first show it was really funny because everyone was freaking out that what if one of the members comes, and me and my drummer Nate, as we were leaving the backstage area, we ran into Billy walking in. It was kind of a shock for me because I never really expected ever to meet the man, and he talked to us for a good half an hour, and it was kind of awe-inspiring. He just seemed really, really down to earth, really, really kind and like generous. Like when he talked, I grew very comfortable in the conversation really quickly.
I remember how Billy was sitting up in the balcony trying to hold a conversation with his dad. Meanwhile, there were all these kids on the floor, and they were screaming, just screaming at him. As soon as they realized that he was there was no chance for him to remain unnoticed. I just remember feeling bad. I remember thinking, I just played. I was on stage a little while ago, but if I wanted to, I could go mosh and I could go hang out in the audience and it wouldn't be a problem. He doesn't have that choice. He can't go mosh, even if he wanted to. And I remember thinking how much that must suck.
The best part was when Billy showed up and was backstage talking to the bands, talking to the kids. It was really, really great. That was probably as exciting for me, just to see them be able to meet, someone like that as a surprise. They were all pretty freaked out, but they handled it very well.
By the time we got to the electric set, people were just totally pumped, and it was a great feeling. And then Billy comes in out of nowhere, and we weren't expecting him, although everyone hoped. And of course I was spreading around rumors, oh, it's Metro, it's the Pumpkins, anything could happen, just so that we could draw in more people. And he showed up, made a very nice speech about how much the show meant to him and everything, and it was just kind of an affirmation of everything that we had been working for. I mean, the show would have been just as good without him showing up, but still it was that added bonus for the fans, I think.
I'd like to say thank you very much to everyone who put this together. Unbelievable. This concert is in the true spirit of why we started the Smashing Pumpkins.
Seeing the show for the first time, it was almost like, a child was being born. Your brainchild had come to full fruition. People were happy. The house was packed. It's something that you had put so much work into that you had been worried about. I mean, everything was up in the air. We were out of contact from Metro for a very long time. Some guy was spreading around a vicious rumor that Joe had pulled the plug on the show. But of course, those turned out to be awful rumors, and we proved them all wrong.
Act 4 2001 raised $7,300 for the Make-A-Wish Foundation of Northern Illinois.